Well, after almost a month's stay in La Rochelle, we were ready to get underway. Here's a quick recap of the first leg of our route, which was across the Bay of Biscay. So we picked up the boat in La Rochelle, France. Here's an overview of the marina taken from Google Earth. And I'm going to give you a quick overview of our route. First of all, we had to cross the Bay of Biscay, and we had a general idea to head towards Gijon or A Coruña. We actually pulled into Ribadeo, Spain, and that was about 300 miles, pulling into the Rio Ribadeo, cute little town of Ribadeo, where we stayed a couple of nights, before we moved on to A Coruña in northern Spain. We cut straight across the bay, minimizing our distance across the Bay of Biscay. Here we are leaving La Rochelle. Before we got underway, we hoisted our Code Zero sail made by Shore Sails, Pensacola. Proved to be a wonderful sail for us. And here's just a quick aerial view of the marina, which was quite a sight. We estimated there were about 5,000 boats in this marina, and I understand it's probably the largest marina in Europe. And finally we get underway. It's hard to get a perspective on what the wave heights are, but today we've seen many 15 to 20 foot waves, and here comes a big one right now, just a big swell. Comes at you like a wall, the boat climbs up it, and over we go. The boat's doing really well, thankfully. Quite a few AIS targets. And we're doing about 7 knots. We hit 11 knots at one point going down a big ass wave. Of course I didn't have the camera out there. Anyway, here we are, Bay of Biscay, A1. After a couple of days of sea, we finally see the coast of northern Spain. And of course, a visit by our friends the dolphins.
There's a ton of them all. They're saying welcome to Spain!
Biscay, sunrise over northern Spain. Back over there is Dijon, little fishing boat, a flashing light ahead, or side of it, you can see that. Mountains just starting to light up with the sunrise. Looks like it'd be a pretty day. Heading into Ria, something or other. Although the sea doesn't seem that rough in the video, we actually had 15 to 20 foot waves, and overnight it was pretty stormy and choppy. Here we are arriving at Ribadeo, going under the bridge and up the river. Still cold in December, we hadn't reached the warm weather yet, but we really enjoyed ourselves in this little cute town. Everyone says the food is good in France, but we actually preferred the food in Spain. After a couple of nights in Ribadeo, it was finally time for us to move on to A Coruña, Spain. This was to get us around the final corner of the Bay of Biscay. A Coruña is quite an industrial port, but a beautiful town, a lot larger town than we had really anticipated. And we again stayed several days here, restocking, getting our breath before we went around Finisterre. We visited the King of Ham, got some vacuum-packed meats for our trip in case of emergency. Finisterre was perhaps the most daunting piece of the trip in my mind, and certainly the point of the trip that I had the most anxiety about. We've been watching the weather, waiting for a good weather window. The winds have been relentless from the south, leading to really bad conditions around Finisterre, and finally we saw a window that we thought was a good time to leave. It was not ideal conditions, but at this time of year, ideal conditions are very rare. Several other boats decided to leave at the same time as us, but we quickly lost sight of them all. Finisterre is a daunting place. The Romans believed it was the end of the world, and I think they had pretty good reason for that. Here's a view of Cabo Finisterre in the daylight. We actually rounded Finisterre after nightfall. Maybe it was a good thing we couldn't see everything here. We stayed well offshore to avoid any currents, rocks, etc. associated with Finisterre, and to give ourselves plenty of margin for error. That night, rounding Finisterre was perhaps one of the saddest nights of the trip. As nightfall came, we started to hear emergency calls from a 100-foot-long fishing vessel. First, one person was overboard. They were obviously looking for him in the fierce seas. Then came another call, a second man overboard. Then, the Spanish Coast Guard stepped in and started requesting that mariners keep a sharp lookout. Of course we did, but in those conditions we couldn't see more than 50 feet from the boat. The Spanish Coast Guard put on an impressive rescue effort. They launched a 300-foot-long search and rescue boat and a fleet of helicopters that spent the entire night searching the area. We kept hearing the calls from the Coast Guard, but to the best of my knowledge, no one was recovered. It was a very harrowing night. The next morning, we decided to come into port at Viana de Castello. Viana de Castello was a beautiful town. It was approaching Christmas time. In fact, this was one of those towns that you just stumble across as a cruiser and can't believe how fortunate you've been. The architecture and artwork was exquisite. As it was nearing Christmas time, Christmas music was being piped through the streets. You've heard of the red carpet treatment. Well, the streets of Vienna were literally carpeted with red carpet for Christmas time. It truly was exquisite. Here we are in Milano. But I couldn't remember where we were. It was Viana de Castello. We had a great meal at the Three Pots Fondue restaurant, again one of our better meals on the trip. We tied up on the visitors dock because the marina entrance was too narrow for us to get into. We only stayed the night ready to move on. Our original thoughts were to head to Porto, but the weather was once again atrocious. So we cut the trip short and pulled in to Póvoa de Varzim. At least I think that's how you pronounce it. Póvoa was a similar town to Vienna, not quite as pretty, but still had a wonderful character of its own. We would have stayed longer, but the marina had no gas or diesel. It was approaching Christmas time, so we thought we'd better make tracks and get on towards Porto. Well, here we are motoring on our way to Porto. Just left Póvoa de Varzim. Nice little town, really friendly marina. Except they had no diesel. Had no fuel of any type, which was kind of amazing since part of it was a fishing port. And we had about a half a tank left on each one. So we figured with Christmas coming up, we better get some diesel. And so probably about a 3-hour motor. Ooh, straight ahead of us. Video so you can move, you can wave.
The entrance of Porto. We'll be here for a few days, probably after Christmas. New crew is coming in. Christmas holidays, everything will be closed, so I'm probably going to be here for a few days. Big rollers going in here. Probably won't show up on the video.
We arrived in Porto ready to spend the Christmas holidays at the marina known as Marina Douro, located just inside the mouth of the Douro River. Christmas was a great time. We had the pleasure of being with our friends Larry and Tracy. We saw construction of the old traditional boats just down the road in Gaia. And we took a walk around the docks where the river cruises go from. They take river cruises up the Douro River where the grapes are grown for port. We stumbled upon a motorcycle rally, and we took the opportunity to visit several port caves and really enjoyed our time. We learnt a lot about the process of making port, from aging in oak casks, and enjoyed a number of very fine samples. There were some very familiar names such as Sandeman, Croft, and we learnt a lot about the history of the port industry in Porto. Of course, we sampled several glasses, my personal favourite being the white port. And we took the opportunity to put the name on Midnight Sun 3, something we'd meant to do for some time, including our hailing port of Pirates Cove, Alabama. We enjoyed a fine Christmas dinner in the marina, and we managed to find a turkey, even though that's not the traditional Christmas dinner in Portugal. We learned that traditional Christmas dinner is salted codfish, but we elected to go with the traditional turkey. While we were in Porto, we enjoyed a wonderful walking tour and discovered that the town is extremely hilly. We visited some spectacular bridges, the railroad station, which had a wonderful art collection, and the cathedral up on the hill. We really enjoyed the city of Porto. Definitely a place I'd like to go back to and spend more time. The river cruises seemed like a wonderful thing to do. Unfortunately, we couldn't get under all the bridges, or we'd gone further up. We took the funicular back down to the river, crossed over the bridge, Bridge Louis, they call it. They even have jet fleas now. And we took the gondola back down into the old town of Gaia. Just in time for a visit to Churchill's Port Caves. Here we see some of the traditional boats that are used to bring the wine down the river to make into port. We really enjoyed our time in Porto, and it's certainly a place I'd love to go back and visit and perhaps take a river cruise up into the wine country.